On June 5th, 2007, in the warm, sultry heart of New Orleans, where the fragrant aroma of jasmine filled the air and echoes of the city's storied past lingered on every corner, the Walker family resided. Their home, a grand historic mansion in the French Quarter, stood as a testament to old Southern affluence. With its intricate ironwork balconies, a courtyard shaded by ancient oaks and magnolias in bloom, the house seemed like a place where time had paused, holding on to the secrets of its many residents. At the center of the family was Michael Walker, a 47-year-old entrepreneur who had built a thriving business rooted in the vibrant culinary traditions of New Orleans. Born and raised in the city, Michael's ties to the local community ran deep. His family had been part of New Orleans' elite for generations, and his restaurants, renowned for their authentic Creole dishes, were beloved by both locals and tourists. Michael's charisma and business expertise made him a respected figure, and his accomplishments only strengthened his connection to the city he cherished. His dining establishments weren't merely places to eat. They were destinations where people could experience the essence of New Orleans. Michael's second wife, Lorraine Walker, was a striking 35-year-old known for her beauty and impeccable fashion sense. Originally from Memphis, Tennessee, Lorraine had once pursued a promising career in the fashion world, but had left it behind upon relocating to New Orleans. Here, she discovered a new passion, transforming historic homes into modern marvels while retaining their vintage charm. It was through this work that she met Michael, and their whirlwind romance quickly led to marriage. To outsiders, their relationship appeared ideal. Michael, the dashing, successful businessman, and Lorraine, the stylish, devoted wife. However, beneath the surface, there were tensions neither could fully grasp. Michael's son, Eric Walker, was 21 and in his final year at Tane University, studying business administration with plans to join his father's company upon graduating. Growing up in the shadow of his father's achievements, Eric admired him and aspired to follow in his footsteps. His relationship with Lorraine was friendly. She had entered his life during his teenage years, and over time they had formed a bond that transcended the typical stepmother-stepson dynamic. To Eric, Lorraine was not only a trusted confidant, but also someone who seemed to understand him in ways few others could. Yet, as the months passed, Lorraine began to view Eric with conflicted emotions, a mix of maternal care, admiration, and a more troubling unnamed feeling. Lorraine confided in her closest friend, Angelica Blake, a 40-year-old attorney who had been close to Michael's family for years. Known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense demeanor, Angelica had earned a reputation as one of the best in her field. She had guided Michael through the legal complexities of his business ventures, and over time became a trusted advisor to both him and Lorraine. Regular visits to the Walker home were part of Angelica's routine, and she often mediated disputes or offered advice on both personal and professional matters. But as Lorraine's feelings for Eric shifted, Angelica began noticing subtle changes in her friend: anxiety, unease, and a tension that hinted at something deeper than ordinary marital strain. By June 2007, as the city basked in the early summer warmth, the Walker mansion carried an undercurrent of unresolved tension and unspoken words. While the lively spirit of New Orleans thrived just outside its doors, a dangerous obsession was taking root within the household, one that would soon upend the lives of everyone inside. As the summer days unfolded, the dynamic between Lorraine and Eric began to change in ways neither had anticipated. What had once been a straightforward, almost familial connection began to shift into something far more complex. Initially, Lorraine dismissed her growing awareness of Eric as fleeting and insignificant. Yet, as their interactions became more frequent, these thoughts grew harder to suppress. Eric was no longer the boy she had watched mature. He had become a confident, charming young man whose presence she found increasingly captivating. Their conversations began to stray into more personal, revealing territory, and Lorraine noticed how Eric's gaze lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. These moments, once innocent, became charged with a tension she couldn't ignore. She started to anticipate these encounters, savoring the unspoken energy between them. The boundaries separating them began to blur, and Lorraine found herself stepping over lines she never imagined crossing. The turning point arrived on a humid June evening when Michael was away on a business trip. The old mansion, with its creaking floors and whispering walls, felt more secluded than ever. Left alone, Lorraine and Eric began the evening with dinner, but as the hours passed, the mood shifted. Under the influence of wine, their conversations grew deeper and more intimate, uncovering secrets they hadn't shared before. The distance between them dissolved, replaced by an unspoken connection. As the night progressed, the tension between them became unbearable. Lorraine could feel the intensity in Eric's gaze, the way his eyes lingered on her. She knew she should stop things before they went too far, but the magnetic pull she felt was overpowering. The forbidden nature of their growing attraction only heightened its allure, making it all the more irresistible. Eventually, Eric made the first move, a tentative touch, his hand lingering on her arm. Lorraine froze, her breath catching, aware of the line they were about to cross. Then she leaned into him, and the floodgates of their suppressed desire broke. Their first kiss was hesitant, exploratory, but it quickly deepened into something more urgent and consuming. The world around them faded as they gave in to the passion that had been simmering between them. In that instant, nothing else seemed to matter. Not the potential fallout, nor the possibility that Michael might call or return home at any moment. The world had narrowed down to just the two of them, and the overwhelming need to be together. In the days that followed, their hidden affair became a constant presence in their lives. They sought out stolen moments whenever they could, early in the quiet mornings or late at night when the house was silent. The thrill of keeping their secret only added to the intensity of their connection, but it also brought a mounting sense of unease. Lorraine was painfully aware that what they were doing was wrong, a betrayal of everything she had built with Michael. Still, she couldn't find the strength to stop. The fear of being discovered loomed in her mind, but it was overshadowed by the powerful pull she felt toward Eric. As their relationship progressed, Lorraine found herself caught in a conflict between her love for Michael and the fiery passion she shared with Eric. Guilt gnawed at her, yet the thought of ending things with Eric felt unbearable. She understood that their secret couldn't stay hidden forever, that the truth would eventually come out. But for the time being, she chose to live in the moment, treasuring the stolen glances, the whispered words, and the nights they spent cloaked in shadows. Despite the risks and the growing strain, Lorraine was trapped in a situation she had created, unable to resist the temptation that consumed her. Over time, the clandestine relationship between Lorraine and Eric deepened, transforming into a whirlwind of emotions that soon spiraled beyond her control. The initial excitement of their secret romance gave way to an all-consuming need that dominated Lorraine's thoughts day and night. Each meeting between them was intense and passionate, but with every encounter a growing unease began to settle in Lorraine's heart, a fear that Eric's devotion wasn't entirely hers to claim. Her suspicions intensified as she noticed subtle shifts in Eric's behavior. While he remained attentive and eager to please, he also seemed distracted at times. His phone would buzz with messages, and glimpses of unfamiliar names would ignite a deep, burning jealousy within her. Lorraine's imagination began to run wild, picturing Eric with other women, sharing laughter and moments that threatened to erase the intimacy they shared. The mere thought of another woman capturing Eric's attention drove her to the edge of reason. Lorraine's jealousy quickly evolved into a consuming paranoia. She found herself waiting by the window, scanning the street for signs of Eric, her heart racing at the possibility of him being with someone else. On weekends, she meticulously planned their time together, determined to maximize every second they spent as a pair. Yet no matter her efforts, doubts crept into her thoughts, casting shadows over even the simplest interactions. Every casual conversation with Eric seemed to carry hidden meanings, and every smile he shared with others only fueled her insecurity. One evening, sitting on the porch of their historic mansion, Lorraine watched as Eric strolled down the street with a group of friends. His easy laughter and carefree demeanor only deepened her dread. She felt an overpowering urge to confront him, to demand his loyalty, but hesitated, aware of how fragile their bond had become. Instead, she retreated into the shadows, observing from a distance, a silent spectator to the life she longed to be part of. Eric, meanwhile, began to sense a change in their relationship. What had once been an exhilarating affair now felt like a suffocating weight. Lorraine's obsessive behavior started to overwhelm him, and he found himself yearning for the freedom he had before. He tried to put some distance between them, suggesting they take a break to regain perspective. But each attempt only fueled Lorraine's fears. Her paranoia deepened, convinced that Eric was slipping away. The emotional strain on Lorraine grew heavier with each passing day. She became hyper-aware of every interaction Eric had with others, analyzing his words and actions for hidden meanings. The once charming moments they shared became battlegrounds for her insecurities. She began to imagine elaborate scenarios, secret rendezvous, flirtations, and late-night texts that pushed her closer to the edge. Her fear of losing Eric consumed her, driving her to desperate measures to keep him close. In her desperation, Lorraine made impulsive choices that shocked even herself. She began following Eric, lurking at a distance in an attempt to uncover the truth. She would trail him when he went out with friends, pretending her presence was coincidental, her heart racing with a mix of dread and excitement. Each time she saw him laughing with another girl, a fiery rage consumed her, a jealousy she couldn't suppress. One fateful evening, after witnessing Eric in an extended conversation with an unfamiliar woman, Lorraine reached her breaking point. The sight of Eric's smiling face paired with the presence of another woman sent her into a frenzy. In that moment, she decided she couldn't let anyone come between them. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Lorraine resolved to act, to assert her place in Eric's life in a way that left no room for rivals. Driven by a tumultuous mix of love and obsession, Lorraine determined she would do whatever it took to keep Eric by her side. She realized she was prepared to sacrifice everything she had, including her marriage to Michael, to preserve their connection. She convinced herself that love, even in its most distorted form, justified her actions. But she couldn't foresee the dangerous and dark consequences of her choices. Consumed by desperation, Lorraine's thoughts spiraled further into chaos. What had once been an exhilarating relationship had morphed into an overwhelming fixation, threatening to unravel her carefully constructed life. Jealousy gnawed at her relentlessly, and she became convinced their affair couldn't continue with Michael's constant presence. The fear of Michael discovering the truth filled her with dread, and in her mind there was only one solution. Michael had to be eliminated. In the darkest corners of her mind, Lorraine began crafting a meticulous plan. She envisioned a life with Eric, free from secrecy and guilt, where Michael was no longer an obstacle. Her obsession led her down a dangerous path, one that would soon unfold with devastating consequences. She envisioned herself stepping into the role of a devoted partner, free from the shadows of her past. However, such a plan demanded precision, as it required crafting a flawless accident that left no hint of foul play. Aware she couldn't accomplish this alone, Lorraine turned to Angelica Blake, a skilled lawyer and trusted friend. Angelica, who often envied Lorraine's seemingly perfect life, was sharp, ambitious, and vulnerable to temptation. Lorraine noticed the subtle hints of jealousy in Angelica's demeanor and decided to use them to her advantage. One evening, under the pretense of discussing a potential business opportunity, Lorraine invited Angelica to her opulent residence in the French Quarter. The aging mansion, with its creaking floors and dimly flickering candles, provided the perfect setting for a secretive conversation. Seated in the subdued glow of the living room, Lorraine cautiously broached the topic that had dominated her thoughts. She vividly described her unhappy marriage, portraying herself as trapped, and hinted that Michael's absence might be the key to her freedom. Angelica listened intently, her interest piqued by Lorraine's revelations. Lorraine wove a compelling tale, subtly introducing the financial benefits that could follow Michael's departure. She tempted Angelica with the vision of taking over the family business and elevating it to new heights. As the idea of shared power began to spark Angelica's ambition, Lorraine observed her friend's growing intrigue. The room grew heavy with tension as the weight of Lorraine's proposals settled between them. Though Angelica hesitated, her moral compass battling the allure of power, Lorraine's persuasive words gradually won her over. Together, they devised a detailed plan centered on Michael's restaurants, renowned for their lively banquets. Lorraine suggested orchestrating a fire during a busy event, using the ensuing chaos as a cover for their actions. They planned a tragic incident that would attract media attention and deflect suspicion from Lorraine. The scheme involved starting a minor fire that would appear accidental, perhaps by tampering with kitchen equipment or creating an electrical fault. Lorraine pictured the flames climbing the walls, smoke curling through the air, and panic spreading among the guests. She planned to place herself strategically, acting as a victim in need of rescue, ensuring that she appeared entirely uninvolved. Angelica contributed her legal expertise, highlighting potential risks and suggesting ways to conceal any evidence. Together, they meticulously outlined every aspect, from the timing of the fire to Lorraine's escape route. They even discussed how to ensure Michael's presence at the right time, setting the stage for the disaster to unfold seamlessly. As their discussion deepened, Lorraine felt a mix of exhilaration and dread. She was venturing into a dark realm that promised freedom, but also carried the risk of complete ruin. On the eve of the banquet, Lorraine experienced a strange sense of calm. Standing before a mirror, she studied her reflection. The uncertainty that had once plagued her was gone, replaced by a determined resolve that mirrored the darkness growing within her. Each moment brought her closer to accepting what she was about to do. She had crossed into a world of deceit and conspiracy, with no way to turn back. The stage was set, and the curtain was about to rise on a tragedy that would change everything. The evening of September 12th, 2017, was heavy with tension as the historic building that housed Michael's restaurant came alive with activity. The grand celebration was filled with laughter, music, and the enticing aroma of Creole cuisine. Guests dressed in their finest streamed in, eager to enjoy the festivities. Yet behind the scenes, Lorraine and Angelica prepared to carry out a plan that would change their lives forever. As the night progressed, Lorraine was overwhelmed by a mix of excitement and fear. They intended to start the fire in the storeroom once the restaurant reached its busiest moment, ensuring maximum chaos while avoiding suspicion. A quick glance at Angelica, who seemed equally tense, strengthened Lorraine's resolve. They would use the bustling kitchen as a cover, the noise of sizzling pans and clinking dishes masking their true intentions. When the moment arrived, Lorraine slipped away, pretending to check on the storeroom preparations. Taking a deep breath, she felt the weight of her decision press heavily on her. With trembling hands, she started the fire, watching the flames come to life before retreating. Smoke began to rise, curling into the air. The fire was meant to be small, just enough to create panic without causing harm. But as Lorraine listened to the growing commotion in the dining area, an unexpected thrill coursed through her. The plan quickly spiraled out of control. The fire spread rapidly, feeding on the tightly packed supplies in the storeroom. Panic surged through Lorraine as she realized the flames were no longer contained, quickly consuming the building. The roar of the fire drowned out the sounds of the celebration, replaced by shouts of alarm and frightened screams. Thick smoke filled the air, and Lorraine's initial sense of control turned to terror. Trapped by the growing flames, Lorraine struggled to find a way out. The heat surrounded her, and desperation overtook her as she realized she was caught in the inferno of her own making. Meanwhile, Michael became aware of the disaster as alarms blared throughout the restaurant. Racing toward the chaos, he was determined to find Lorraine. Nearby, Eric heard of the fire and rushed to the scene, his heart sinking as he saw the orange glow and plumes of smoke against the night sky. Reaching the site, he watched firefighters battling the blaze, his focus fixed on locating Lorraine. Inside, the dense smoke clouded Lorraine's vision as she stumbled through the darkness, searching for an escape. Just as her strength began to fade, Michael's voice pierced the chaos like a beacon of hope. Driven by desperation, he fought through the suffocating heat and smoke, unaware of Lorraine's true role in the catastrophe. Finally, Michael found her, slumped semi-conscious against a wall and gasping for air. Without hesitation, he scooped her into his arms, his heart pounding as he fought to carry her to safety, determined to save her from the flames. He pushed through the choking smoke and blazing heat, carrying her toward the exit. Outside, chaos reigned as firefighters worked relentlessly to bring the flames under control, with sirens echoing in the background. Eric arrived just in time to witness his father emerging from the building, cradling Lauren protectively in his arms. Overwhelmed with confusion, Eric hurried forward, struggling to process the magnitude of what had unfolded. As Lauren was pulled from the inferno, the gravity of the situation began to dawn on Michael. Yet disbelief clouded his thoughts. Looking at his soot-covered wife, he felt a surge of relief that she was alive, though the unanswered question of how everything had gone so terribly wrong loomed heavily over him. As the fire continued to rage behind them, the path they had chosen revealed an unexpected and ominous turn. In the aftermath, the sight of his burned restaurant and the chaos of that night left Michael increasingly suspicious that the fire had been far from accidental. Driven by a need for the truth, he hired a private investigator to uncover the real story. As the investigator pieced together the evidence, a disturbing link surfaced. Both Lauren and Angelica were implicated in the arson. Michael's anguish deepened when he learned of Lauren's affair with Eric, a betrayal more devastating than he could have imagined. Determined to confront the two, Michael arranged a meeting at their home. Once a place of love and happiness, it was now overshadowed by lies and despair. The air was thick with tension as Michael braced himself for a confrontation that promised to be both emotional and explosive. When Lauren and Angelica arrived, the truth unraveled like a storm, overwhelming them with a cascade of accusations and revelations. Each word spoken left Lauren increasingly trapped, realizing her carefully planned scheme was falling apart. As panic took hold, Lauren's desperation escalated. In a moment of pure instinct for self-preservation, she grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter. Her thoughts raced as she made a desperate move to silence Michael. Lunging toward him, she was stopped by Eric, who stepped in front of his father without hesitation, determined to protect him no matter the cost. What followed was a frantic and violent struggle, a chaotic clash driven by fear, anger, and betrayal. Amid the turmoil, Lauren's erratic movements led to an unexpected tragedy. The knife slipped from her grip, and in a sudden turn of events, she felt a sharp pain as the blade struck her. The realization of her imminent death washed over her, leaving her gasping for breath as she collapsed to the floor. Michael stood frozen in horror, watching the life fade from Lauren's eyes. Eric, shaken by the violence that had erupted, struggled to comprehend the catastrophic events that had just unfolded. While the chaos unfolded, Angelica saw her chance to escape. Her heart pounding with fear, she bolted for the door. However, the police, alerted by the earlier commotion, arrived just in time to intercept her. She was arrested on suspicion of plotting the arson and murder, her ambitions and jealousy now leading her to face dire consequences. The case moved swiftly to trial, drawing significant public and media attention. In the courtroom, the prosecution presented a compelling story of deceit and betrayal, illustrating how Lauren had orchestrated the entire plan in a desperate bid to free herself from Michael. Witnesses testified about Lauren's erratic behavior and emotional instability in the lead-up to the incident. Michael, who had acted out of self-defense during the struggle with Lauren, found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions as the trial unfolded. He listened to the heartbreaking accounts of his wife's infidelity and her calculated scheme, grappling with the weight of guilt and loss. The defense argued that Michael's actions were instinctive, a reflexive response to the chaos Lauren had created with no intent to harm her. After deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict. Michael was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The ruling acknowledged the tragic context while holding him accountable for Lauren's death. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, a term intended to provide him time for reflection and rehabilitation. As the judge's gavel struck, sealing his fate, Michael was left to confront the profound consequences of that fateful night. The intertwining burdens of guilt, his wife's loss, and his son's betrayal weighed heavily on him. The trial served as a sobering reminder of how love, obsession, and deceit could lead to devastating outcomes, forever altering the lives of everyone involved.